I never thought I'd be the guy who got cheated on. I mean, I always considered myself a decent husband. My name is Mark, and I was married to Jennifer for almost 8 years. We had our ups and downs, sure, but we were good together, or so I thought. We had our own house, a couple of dogs, and a decent life built together. That's why it hit me like a freight train when I started noticing things were off. It began subtly. Jennifer started working late more often, claiming it was just a busy season at her job. I wanted to be supportive, so I didn't question it. But then I noticed her phone was glued to her hand. She was always texting, and whenever I walked into the room, she would quickly lock her phone. I dismissed it at first. I trusted her. But trust only goes so far when you start to feel that gnawing doubt in your gut. I remember one particular night when she came home late. She smelled of cheap perfume that wasn't hers. She'd always worn this floral scent I loved. I asked her about it and she shrugged it off, laughing, telling me it was just a coworker's new fragrance that she'd tried on. I wanted to believe her, but deep down I felt something was off. The signs were subtle, but there was a growing weight in my chest that I couldn't shake. One evening I came home early from work, the sun still shining bright outside. I opened the front door and was greeted by an unusual silence. The dogs didn't bark, which was strange. They always went nuts when I walked in. As I moved through the house, I noticed Jennifer's purse on the kitchen counter and her shoes scattered by the door. She told me she had a meeting that day, but the shoes seemed hastily discarded. I walked into our bedroom and that's when I saw it, the unmistakable scent of that same cheap perfume lingering in the air. My heart raced as I noticed her phone buzzing on the nightstand. Without thinking, I picked it up. The screen lit up with messages and my world shattered. There it was, plain as day, flirty text to someone named Jake. I felt sick. The messages were explicit, filled with promises and excitement that I knew were meant for someone else. I read them over and over, my eyes blurring with tears. This was my wife, the woman I trusted with my life, sending messages to another man while I was out working to provide for us. The betrayal cut deep, sharper than any knife. I could feel my anger building, mixing with disbelief and heartbreak. I had to know. I had to confront her. It felt like a storm was brewing inside me, and I knew I couldn't hold it back for long. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. When she finally came home, a little past 9, I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to jump. Her face lit up when she saw me, but that quickly faded as she noticed my expression. "Hey honey, you're home early," she chirped, oblivious to the storm brewing behind my eyes. "Yeah, we need to talk," I replied, my voice steady but filled with an undercurrent of rage. I held her phone up, showing her the messages. The color drained from her face. It felt good to finally take control, to force her to confront what she had done. "What the hell is this, Jennifer?" I demanded, my voice rising. "Who the hell is Jake?" Her reaction was immediate, a mix of panic and defiance. "Mark, it's not what it looks like," she exclaimed, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and indignation. "I can explain." Her excuses came pouring out like a dam breaking. She claimed Jake was just a friend, someone to talk to when work got stressful. She insisted that the messages were taken out of context, just harmless flirting, but deep down I knew better. There was a part of me that wanted to believe her. I wanted to cling to the hope that there was something redeemable in our marriage. But as she continued to backpedal, I realized how hollow her words felt. This wasn't just a slip-up. This was a betrayal that cut to the core. I felt a wave of emotion crash over me. Hurt, anger, confusion. It was overwhelming. I had trusted this woman with everything, and here she was, lying to my face. The confrontation spiraled into a heated argument, accusations flying between us like bullets. I was furious, but I was also heartbroken. She was the love of my life, and now I felt like a fool. The emotional impact was suffocating, and all the while I could see her demeanor change. The tough facade started to crack, revealing a glimpse of guilt hidden beneath her bravado. As the screams died down and silence settled in our home, I knew I was at a crossroads. What was I going to do next? I felt the weight of the betrayal heavy on my chest, and I had to consider my options carefully. But for now, I just needed to process everything. I needed a plan. The confrontation with Jennifer left me reeling. The pain of betrayal was raw and fresh, and my mind was racing. I couldn't understand how someone I loved so deeply could stoop so low. The anger was still surging through me, but it was starting to morph into something more complex. A desire for revenge, a need to reclaim my dignity. I felt like I was on a roller coaster, with my emotions swinging wildly from anger to despair. After the argument, Jennifer stormed off to the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. I stood in the living room, staring at the wall, feeling completely lost. I needed air. I needed perspective. I grabbed my keys and headed out to a nearby park where I often went to clear my head. The cool breeze felt refreshing as I walked, but it did little to ease the turmoil inside me. I thought about everything we'd built together. The memories of our wedding, the laughter we shared, the plans we made for the future, they all felt like a lie now. The thought of her with another man in our home, in our bed, was nauseating. I wanted to scream, to shout until my voice was hoarse, but instead I walked in silence, letting the weight of her betrayal settle heavily on my shoulders. As I wandered the park, I couldn't shake the feeling of humiliation. I was the guy whose wife cheated on him. It was a label I never wanted, but here I was. I knew I had to confront not only Jennifer but also the reality of our situation. I needed to take control of my life back, and that meant devising a plan. When I returned home, Jennifer was still in the bedroom, and the atmosphere felt thick with unresolved tension. I took a deep breath and decided it was time to put my plan into action. I wasn't going to be the victim here. I was going to show her that I wouldn't let her betrayal go unpunished. It was time for some payback. I began by gathering evidence. I needed to know just how deep the affair went. I went through her phone, her computer, anything I could get my hands on. I found more messages, more evidence of her deceit, cozy chats with Jake that were far more intimate than she had admitted. I learned about their secret rendezvous, the time she had lied about working late when she was really with him. Each discovery fueled my anger and solidified my resolve to make her feel the consequences of her actions. As I pieced together the timeline of her infidelity, I felt a sick satisfaction. I was no longer just the wronged husband. I was becoming a man with a plan. I decided that I would confront Jake. He needed to know what kind of person he was dealing with. I thought about how satisfying it would be to bring the truth crashing down on him just as it had been brought down on me. I found Jake's social media profiles and quickly gathered the information I needed. He was a local bartender, and it didn't take long before I figured out where he worked. The plan was simple. I would go to the bar, confront him, and let him know exactly who he was entangling himself with. I wasn't going to hide in the shadows. I was going to take charge of my life. The next day, I decided to pay him a visit. I had no idea how the confrontation would go or what I'd say, but the thought of standing toe-to-toe with the man who had invaded my marriage was both terrifying and exhilarating. I arrived at the bar just as the sun was setting, bathing the street in warm, golden light. The place had a lively buzz, filled with laughter and the clinking of glasses. I stepped inside, scanning the room for Jake. When I spotted him, I felt my heart race. He was leaning against the bar, chatting up a couple of women, his charm oozing like a slick oil. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. It was time to put my plan into action. I approached the bar, making my way through the crowd. As I got closer, I noticed the laughter dying down, replaced by curious glances from patrons who sensed tension in the air. Jake looked up and our eyes locked. There was a flicker of recognition in his gaze, but it was quickly replaced with a cocky grin. He had no idea what was coming. "Can I help you?" he asked, feigning innocence. "Yeah, you can." "We need to talk," I replied, my tone low and steady. I could feel the eyes of the bar patrons on us, the anticipation hanging thick in the air. His smile faltered, but he quickly recovered. "About what? You got a problem with me?" "Oh, I definitely do," I shot back, my anger bubbling just beneath the surface. "You think it's okay to sleep with my wife, to bring her into your bed while I'm out working to support us?" His expression shifted from cockiness to confusion, and I could see the realization dawn on him. "Wait, Jennifer, she's your wife," he stammered. "Yeah, she is, and you've been playing with fire, Jake. You have no idea who you're messing with," I said, my voice low and dangerous. As I laid out the details of their affair, I could see the color drain from his face. He tried to defend himself, claiming he didn't know she was married, but the excuses fell flat. I was done with the lies. I wanted him to feel the weight of his actions, just as I had. The confrontation escalated. I was shouting and patrons were inching closer, some even pulling out their phones to record. I didn't care. I wanted everyone to know the truth. I felt empowered standing there, finally taking control of a situation that had spiraled out of my hands. You think this is a game? You think you can just take what's mine without consequence? I yelled, the anger radiating off me in waves. Jake tried to backpedal, but I wasn't having it. You need to understand that this isn't just between you and me. You've hurt someone who trusted you. You'll pay for it one way or another. As I turned to leave, I felt a sense of satisfaction wash over me. I had confronted the man who had stolen my wife's affections, and for the first time since I found out about the affair, I felt like I was regaining the upper hand. But I also knew this was just the beginning. I had no idea how this would affect my relationship with Jennifer, but in that moment, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I was going to reclaim my life, and the journey ahead was going to be one hell of a ride. After my confrontation with Jake, I felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through my veins. I had taken a significant step in reclaiming my dignity, but I knew that confronting him was just the tip of the iceberg. I was still faced with the more daunting task of dealing with Jennifer. The anger I felt was still bubbling beneath the surface, and I needed to confront her again, this time with a clearer head and a more defined plan. When I finally returned home, the atmosphere felt heavy, charged with an unseen tension. Jennifer was sitting on the couch, her face a mix of confusion and apprehension. She had clearly been waiting for me, likely rehearsing her next set of excuses, but now she had to face the music. I was not going to let her manipulate the narrative any longer. "Mark, you need to listen to me," she started, her voice shaky, but instead of letting her speak, I cut her off. "I already know everything, Jennifer," I said, my voice steady. "I confronted Jake at the bar. He didn't know you were married, but that doesn't excuse what you've done. You brought him into our home. You brought him into our lives. Do you have any idea how humiliating that is for me?" Her expression shifted from shock to anger. "So you went to him. How could you do that?" She snapped, her voice rising. "You think that's going to change anything?" "Change anything? You're seriously asking me that?" I replied, incredulous. "You're the one who betrayed me. You're the one who decided to have an affair. I'm just trying to take control of a situation that you created." She huffed, crossing her arms defensively. "You don't understand. I was unhappy. We were drifting apart and I didn't know how to fix it." Things she was saying felt like a slap in the face. "Unhappy? So you thought cheating was the answer? You thought lying and sneaking around would help? That's your excuse?" "I didn't want to hurt you," she cried, her voice breaking. "I thought I could fix things before it got to this point. By sleeping with another man, that's your version of fixing things." I could feel my blood boiling, but I was determined to stay calm. I needed her to understand the gravity of her actions. "You've shattered my trust in you. You've made me feel like a fool." She opened her mouth to respond, but I wasn't done. "And this isn't just about us anymore. You need to understand what you've done to your life, to mine, and to Jake's. You dragged him into our marriage. You made choices that will have consequences for more people than just us." "I'll talk to him," she insisted, her voice rising again. "I'll end it, I promise." I shook my head, feeling a combination of despair and anger. "It's too late for promises, Jennifer. The damage is done. You have to realize that this isn't just about fixing things overnight. You've hurt me in a way that can't just be brushed aside with a few words." Silence hung between us, thick and oppressive. I could see the frustration in her eyes, but there was also a flicker of guilt. For a brief moment, I thought she might finally understand the impact of her actions, but then her defenses came crashing back. "I don't understand why you're making this such a big deal," she exclaimed, throwing her hands in the air. "You're acting like I'm the worst person in the world. People make mistakes, Mark. People make mistakes, but not everyone chooses to betray their spouse's trust." I countered, my voice rising in intensity. "You made a conscious decision to cheat on me. You chose to be unfaithful, and now you want to play the victim." She looked taken aback, and I could see that the reality of what she had done was starting to sink in. but there was something in her eyes that made it clear she still didn't fully grasp the depth of her betrayal. "Maybe you should consider what you really want," I said, my voice low and steady. "You can't keep pretending that nothing happened. You need to reflect on your choices, or this will only get messier." For the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in her expression. I had hoped to spark some self-reflection, but I wasn't sure if it would be enough. The emotional toll of our confrontation was exhausting, and I was left feeling drained. After a long silence, Jennifer spoke again, her voice softer. "So what happens now?" I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "Now I need some space. We both need to think about what we want moving forward. I can't pretend that everything is fine, and I can't just forgive you right away. Trust takes time to rebuild, and right now I don't trust you at all." Her face fell, and for a moment I felt a pang of sympathy. But I quickly reminded myself that she had made this bed, and now she had to lie in it. I didn't want to be the bad guy, but I also knew I had to stand my ground. "I'll sleep in the spare bedroom for now," I said, feeling a mixture of resolve and sadness. "We need time to think and figure this out." I turned to walk away, leaving her standing there, the weight of the situation hanging heavy in the air. As I settled into the spare room, I couldn't shake the feeling of loss. I had loved this woman, and now I felt like I was watching the remnants of our relationship crumble before my eyes. But I was determined to stand firm. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I needed to think about my own healing, my own future, and what I needed to do next. The days that followed were a blur of emotions: anger, sadness, and a strange sense of freedom. I spent more time with friends, trying to distract myself from the reality of my situation. I even confided in a couple of close friends about what had happened. Their support helped, but it also made me realize just how many people had been affected by Jennifer's actions. But I wasn't done yet. I needed to take the next steps to reclaim my life. My heart still ached, but my mind was clearer now. I couldn't allow her to dictate my happiness any longer. I needed to consider my options carefully, and perhaps, just perhaps, I would find a way to turn the tables on her betrayal. It was time to start thinking about my own revenge and what it meant to truly take control of my life again. As the days turned into weeks, the silence in our home became deafening. I moved into the spare room, and Jennifer remained in our bedroom, the divide between us palpable. We went through the motions of living together but avoided any meaningful conversation. It was like we were two strangers sharing the same space, and the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. I spent most of my days at work, burying myself in tasks to distract from the emotional whirlwind I was experiencing. But even in the office, my thoughts kept drifting back to Jennifer and her betrayal. It was an obsession I couldn't shake. I started thinking more about how I could make her feel the impact of her actions, not just a moment of regret, but a lasting realization of what she had lost. As a part of my plan, I decided to focus on self-improvement. I began hitting the gym more frequently, channeling my anger into physicality. It felt good to sweat out the frustration and reclaim my body. I wanted to look and feel good again, not just for myself, but as a reminder to Jennifer of what she had thrown away. I worked on my appearance, bought new clothes, and even started cooking better meals for myself. I wasn't just going to sulk in my grief. I was going to take control of my life. But my plan didn't stop at self-improvement. I also began to dig deeper into Jennifer's life and her relationship with Jake. I wanted to know what they had built together, how serious it was, and what kind of hold he had over her. I reached out to a few mutual friends who had connections in her social circle, discreetly gathering information without revealing my intentions. It felt like I was becoming a detective in my own life, piecing together the puzzle of their affair. One of my friends, Sarah, who had always been close to Jennifer, offered to help. She was shocked by the news and was more than willing to provide insights into Jennifer's state of mind. "She's been really conflicted," Sarah told me over coffee one afternoon. "I think she genuinely regrets what happened, but she also feels trapped. I don't think she knows how to face you or the reality of what she's done." Her words stung, but they also gave me hope. If Jennifer was feeling conflicted and regretful, it meant my efforts to reclaim my life were having an effect. However, I wanted more than just her regret. I wanted her to truly understand the consequences of her actions, and that required more than just waiting for her to come to terms with things. I decided it was time to confront her once again. I gathered my thoughts and rehearsed what I wanted to say. I made it clear to myself that I wouldn't let her manipulate the conversation. This time, I wanted her to feel the weight of the situation, to grasp how her choices had not only affected our marriage but also her standing in the world. One evening while she was in the kitchen, I made my move. "Jennifer, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady but firm. She looked up, surprise etched on her face. I could see that she was hesitant, but she nodded and turned off the stove, her body language tense as she joined me in the living room. "Mark, I know things are really bad between us right now," she started, her voice shaky. "But I want to try to make it right." I raised my hand to stop her. "No more excuses, Jen. No more 'I'll fix it' or 'I didn't mean to hurt you.' We both know that's not going to cut it. What you did was a choice and you need to own it." She looked taken aback, but I pressed on. "You brought Jake into our lives, into our home. You opened the door to your affair, and I want you to know that I won't let you pretend this didn't happen. You need to face what you've done." "I'm sorry," she pleaded, her eyes starting to glisten with tears. "I'm so sorry for what I did, Mark. I didn't think it would go this far. I was confused and scared." "Scared? You think that's an excuse?" I shot back, my voice rising. "You had a choice every single day and you made the wrong one. You let someone else take my place, and that's something I can't just forgive with a simple apology." Jennifer's shoulders slumped as she sat down on the couch, her head in her hands. "I know I've hurt you," she said, her voice muffled. "But I still love you. I want to fix this." It was hard to hear her say those words, knowing how hollow they felt after everything. "Love isn't enough anymore, Jen. Not after what you've done. This isn't just about love. It's about trust, and you've shattered that. You need to understand that." I paused, letting my words sink in. "I want you to take a good look at what you've lost. Maybe you need to spend some time on your own to understand the value of what we had. I think you need to see Jake for what he really is, a distraction, a mistake. And I'll be honest, I want to know how serious your relationship is with him before we can even think about moving forward." She looked up, her eyes filled with confusion and desperation. "You want me to see him? Why, so I can just feel worse?" "Exactly," I replied, my tone more assertive. "I want you to face the reality of your choices. I want you to realize that you had something real with me and you sacrificed it for something that was never going to last." After a long silence, Jennifer finally nodded. "Okay, I'll talk to him. I'll end it." "I hope you do," I said, feeling the weight of her decision. But I also knew that the realization of what she'd lost wouldn't come easily. It would take time, and I needed to be patient. In the days that followed, I continued focusing on myself. I went out with friends more, enjoyed new experiences, and worked on my career. But in the back of my mind, I was still keeping an eye on Jennifer. I wanted to know what she was doing, how she was handling the aftermath of her choices, and whether she was truly ready to take responsibility for her actions. But that wasn't all. I also felt the need to subtly remind her of the consequences of her actions. I started dating again, not seriously, but enough to show her that I was moving on. I wanted her to feel a twinge of jealousy, a feeling that would make her realize what she could lose forever. I wasn't just going to be the victim in this story. I was going to reclaim my life, my joy, and my future. That was my ultimate revenge, and I was determined to see it through. As I continued to navigate the complexities of my new reality, I could feel the shift in dynamics between Jennifer and me. The silence between us was still thick, but now it felt charged with something different, an unspoken tension that hinted at change. I was relieved to see her finally taking steps to confront Jake, but I was more focused on my own journey. I was determined to show her, and myself, that I could thrive without her. I started going out on dates, mostly casual meetups with women I had met through friends or dating apps. It was liberating to engage with new people, to share laughter and enjoy the early stages of chemistry without the baggage of my marriage weighing me down. I wasn't looking for anything serious. I just wanted to remind myself that I was still desirable and capable of moving forward. I could sense Jennifer's unease whenever I casually mentioned my outings. I remember one evening when I returned home from a date with a woman named Amy. Jennifer was in the kitchen and I could see her tense up as I walked in. "How was your night?" she asked, her tone deceptively casual. "It was good," I replied, a hint of a smile creeping onto my face. "We went to that new Italian place downtown. The food was amazing." Her expression darkened slightly. "I hope you didn't talk about me." I raised an eyebrow, surprised. "Why would I do that? I'm just trying to have a good time, Jen. You should try it sometime." The exchange felt like a small victory for me. I could tell it bothered her that I was moving on, and that was exactly the point. I wanted her to feel the weight of her decisions, to understand that her actions had consequences. I was reclaiming my life, and it felt good, but I also kept a close eye on her as she navigated the fallout of her affair. I noticed that she was spending more time with friends, seeking their support as she dealt with the reality of what she had done. Sarah, in particular, seemed to be a sounding board for her feelings. I couldn't deny that part of me was curious about how she was handling the breakup with Jake. One afternoon, I received a text from Sarah, asking if I wanted to meet for coffee. I agreed, knowing that she might have insights into Jennifer's state of mind. When I arrived at the cafe, I found Sarah already seated at a corner table, her expression serious. "Hey, Mark, thanks for meeting me," she said, her voice low. "I wanted to give you an update on Jennifer." I leaned in, intrigued. "What's going on?" "She's struggling," Sarah admitted. "I think she's finally realizing the gravity of her actions. She's been talking about how much she misses you and the life you built together. It's hitting her hard." I felt a mix of emotions wash over me: sadness, a hint of sympathy, and a strong sense of validation. "And what about Jake?" I asked, curious if she had truly moved on or if she was still clinging to the remnants of that relationship. "She ended things with him," Sarah confirmed. "But it hasn't been easy. He was a distraction, a way for her to escape her feelings, and now she's having to face the reality of her choices without that safety net. It's tough for her." Part of me wanted to revel in the knowledge that she was suffering, but another part felt a twinge of compassion. I had loved this woman once, and hearing about her struggles was sobering. "I just want her to understand what she lost," I said, feeling the weight of my emotions. "I want her to take responsibility for her actions." "I think she is," Sarah replied gently. "It might take time, but she's starting to see things more clearly. Just be patient with her, okay? She's going to need it." I nodded, knowing that I still had a long way to go. While it felt empowering to regain control of my life, I also had to consider whether I was ready to move forward with Jennifer, or if it was time to finalize our separation. As the weeks turned into months, I could see Jennifer trying to improve herself. She began to reach out more, slowly working to rebuild some of the trust that had been shattered. She'd leave little notes around the house, expressing her feelings and her desire to work on things. It was a stark contrast to the woman who had once lied to my face. One evening, as I was unwinding after a workout, I found a note on the coffee table. It read, "I'm sorry for everything. I want to make things right. Let's talk." I felt a whirlwind of emotions: hope, anger, confusion. Did she really mean it? Was I ready to revisit everything we had shared? That night, I decided to confront her. I found her in the living room, scrolling through her phone, her expression distant. "Jennifer," I said firmly, "we need to talk." She looked up, surprise evident in her eyes. "Okay, what's up?" I took a deep breath, feeling a mix of anxiety and determination. "I found your note. I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I need to know what you truly want. Are you committed to repairing our relationship, or are you just saying what you think I want to hear?" "I'm committed, Mark," she replied, her voice earnest. "I know I messed up. I want to make things right, but I realize it's going to take time. I'm willing to put in the effort if you are." "Effort is just the beginning. I need to see real change, real understanding," I said, looking her in the eyes. "You can't just say you're sorry and expect me to forget everything. Trust is built over time, and I need to know you're ready to work at this." She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I understand. I want to earn your trust back. I miss what we had, and I don't want to lose you." "Then show me," I challenged. "Show me that you're willing to put in the work and face the consequences of your choices. Talk to Sarah, talk to your friends, get the support you need." She agreed, her determination evident. "I will, I promise. I just hope you can find it in your heart to give me another chance." As I left the living room, I felt a mix of hope and uncertainty. I wasn't ready to fully forgive her yet, but perhaps there was a way forward. I needed to see how she handled the road ahead, how she faced the consequences of her actions, and whether she could truly commit to rebuilding our relationship. I was starting to realize that revenge might not be about punishment at all. It was about reclaiming my life, finding my strength, and discovering whether I could forgive and rebuild, or whether it was time to finally let go. The journey was far from over, but I was ready to see where it would take me. The following weeks were a roller coaster of emotions as Jennifer, and I began to navigate the rocky path toward rebuilding trust. I could see that she was genuinely trying to make amends. She sought therapy, reached out to friends, and even started journaling to process her feelings. I was cautiously optimistic, but also aware that actions spoke louder than words. I wasn't going to let myself be swept away by mere promises. I needed to witness real change. Our evenings began to shift. We started having honest conversations, often over dinner, where we openly discussed what had happened and how we could improve moving forward. It was uncomfortable at times, peeling back the layers of hurt and betrayal, but it felt necessary. For the first time in a long time, I felt like we were communicating rather than just coexisting. One night, as we sat in the dining room, Jennifer broke down. "I've been so selfish," she confessed, wiping away tears. "I didn't think about how my actions would hurt you. I just wanted to escape the pressure I felt, and now I see how wrong that was." Her vulnerability struck a chord in me. It was the first time I had seen her so raw and honest about how she had hurt both of us. "I understand that you felt lost, but that doesn't excuse what you did," I replied, my voice softer than it had been in weeks. "You made choices that affected not just you but me too. It's going to take time, but I want to believe that you can change." "I will change, Mark. I promise," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't want to lose you again. I want to fight for us." As the days passed, I noticed how she began to take responsibility for her life. She reached out to me more, asking about my day, sharing her thoughts without reservation. We started doing things together again, like cooking meals and going out for walks. Slowly, I felt a familiar connection begin to reemerge, but I still held back from fully opening my heart. One day, I came home from work to find a small surprise waiting for me in the living room. Jennifer had set up a cozy dinner with candles and my favorite meal. It was a gesture that spoke volumes about her commitment to making things right. When I walked in, she greeted me with a warm smile, her excitement palpable. "Surprise! I wanted to do something special for us." She beamed, her eyes sparkling with hope. "Wow, this looks amazing," I said, a genuine smile breaking through my guarded demeanor. I sat down at the table, taking in the effort she had put into it. As we ate, the conversation flowed more easily than it had in a while. We laughed, reminisced about old memories, and gradually began to feel like a couple again. But as we finished the meal and transitioned to the living room, a moment of clarity struck me. I realized that while I was willing to work towards rebuilding our relationship, I needed to set some boundaries. "Jennifer," I began cautiously, "I appreciate everything you're trying to do, but I need us to be clear about where we're heading." She nodded, her expression serious. "I understand. What do you want to say?" "I think we need to establish some ground rules. I need to know that you're committed to this and that there's no way back to that life of betrayal," I explained. "It's essential for me to feel secure, even if it takes time. We can't just rush into things without understanding the risks." She agreed, her eyes filled with understanding. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes, Mark. I'll respect your boundaries and I'll work hard to prove that I'm serious about this." With that, we locked eyes, and in that moment I felt a flicker of hope. I was beginning to see a future where we could grow together, but it would require vigilance and dedication from both of us. I still had my doubts, but I knew that the journey ahead was a shared one. As the weeks turned into months, we continued to work on ourselves and our relationship. Jennifer showed me her progress in therapy, and I began to share my own feelings openly. The emotional walls we had built started to crumble, and we were slowly rebuilding the foundation of our marriage. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching a movie, Jennifer turned to me, her expression serious. "Mark, I want to thank you for giving me a chance. I know I've hurt you deeply, and I'm grateful that you're willing to let me try again." I looked into her eyes and saw the sincerity there. "I'm still hurt, Jen, but I'm also willing to see where this goes. Just know that I need to see continued effort. It won't be easy, but I want to believe in us again." "I will show you," she promised, her voice steady. "I won't take you for granted again." As time passed, I could feel the bond between us strengthening. We faced challenges together, and while I still had moments of doubt, I was learning to trust again. The love we had once shared began to flicker back to life, slowly but surely. In the end, I realized that revenge wasn't about punishing Jennifer or making her feel the pain I had experienced. It was about taking control of my own life, setting boundaries, and knowing my worth. The journey had been painful, but it had also taught me invaluable lessons about love, trust, and resilience. As I reflected on everything we had been through, I found strength in my ability to forgive, not only for Jennifer's sake but for my own. I was learning to embrace the future, whatever it might hold, with the knowledge that I could stand strong and still find joy, even in adversity. This was our second chance, and I was determined to make the most of it.